Cardone's game show.
All right, nice.
Oh, I can hear us over there. And it doesn't even sound like a 20-second delay.
Check, check, check. One,
No
two.
delay, Mark.
Well, because we were actually on meet in there.
What is it? So they didn't
Robin
have
and I
to-
smartened up and instead of doing a delay. Check, check, check. We just added the room as another meet
Gotcha.
participant.
I got you, buddy.
But with no
I'll-
camera, check, check, check. With no camera and no microphone. Check, check, check.
You gotta turn these off.
I'll turn it down.
Turn them off.
Check, check, check. You're worried about that thing you detected.
L to the N.
A jack, jack, jack.
1, 2,
A cha-cha-cha.
Sibilance, sibilance, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Is that Cheryl laughing?
1, 2, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
I don't think anybody's calling here.
Sing a song for us, would you?
Stream has started. I see in here, looks good on stream, also stream. Okay, I'm gonna mute right now.
Okay.
And we'll click it back on once we're ready to go.
I'm well, how are you? Ladies, yeah.
Yeah, her, and I had, you know.
Oh, yeah?
And it was getting there. Yeah, about the same size,
Thank you.
but he's a little bit, a lot more muscular than that, I think faster.
Well, they pay him more than this.
Yeah, and they do, but then,
It was nice.
That was good. So, yeah, no, he's back.
There you
Hey,
Gotta call B today. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you're not.
Yeah, I am.
And I'm gonna start my video here.
Well, we were watching, we were right. We're ready.
The mice.
Oh, mice in here.
So next time you want an escort, take you by the arm.
Hey, Matt, can you, Hey, Matt, can you hear me?
We had you covered.
I have your PowerPoint, so what I'll do is when it's your turn to present, I'll display it. And then you just give me a heads up as to when you want me to advance the slides, okay? Great, thank you.
Very well done.
Yeah. I don't think we're ready, but. Yeah,
You're gonna watch,
you noticed I got one.
you're gonna watch.
He's a notice guy. You're a
Yeah.
notice guy. Don't you dare. I knew you were gonna do it.
Oh.
You're gonna take my comfort.
All right, so everybody set? We'll turn your mic on. Oh, all right, let's begin with the pledge of allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, with us this evening, we have Jay Grover, trustee, Nicole Novak, trustee, Jude Kuhn, our district clerk, Dr. Brian Graham, superintendent, Ashley Dreyer, president, Sue Marston, vice president, Glenn Bobak, trustee, Joy Lamarca, trustee, virtually with us. We also have Robin McCreary, trustee, virtually with us. And we have Cheryl Cardone, assistant superintendent for pupil personnel services, with us, and is with us as well. And Dr. Ruby Harris, assistant superintendent for business and finance. So if I could, just a couple announcements, if you could silence your cell phones, please. There's an emergency exit directly behind me and directly in front of me, in case we have to leave quickly. If we could have a motion to approve the agenda for this evening, February 22nd. I'll motion. And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. And if we could have motion to approve minutes for February 8th, 2021, please.
I'll motion.
And the second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. We did not have anyone sign up for the public comment session for agenda items only, so that brings us to personnel. If I could have a motion to approve PI 1 through PI 4, please.
I'll motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. Do we have any introductions this evening? No? Okay. And non-instructional personnel, if I could have a motion to approve PNI 1 and PNI 2 with the removal of PNI 1A, please.
I'll motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
abstentions? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. And that brings us to special education pupil personnel services with Cheryl Cardone.
Good evening, everyone. I will do my 2 action items first, and then I will give the presentation update on family support services. So if I could have action on CSC and CPS program recommendations, please.
I'll motion.
All right, and a second?
I can second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any instructions for personnel services A and B? Any abstentions? All, motion carried 7-0.
All right, well, thank you for that. I am going to present. Dr. Graham, if you could tell me if the presentation is up in a moment, I'd appreciate it.
You bet. It's all set, Cheryl.
Is it all set?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So the update, I know Sue Marston brought this up last board meeting, so I wanted to do a quick update today and tell you where we're at. Just a reminder for everybody, thank you to the Board of Education for allowing us to hire another full-time social worker for the district. Jessica Hutchings is that candidate. She is 0.5 social worker in the middle school, and then she also is working for our family support services. So again, thank you for that. We also have a wellness committee, and because of COVID, we haven't met this year, but I do share probably bi-monthly updates where we are with our people, our people that we have contracted with for the district for our family support services. So I will speak to those first, and then I'll go from there. So first of all, we are contracting with Horizons Health Services. Horizons is in the district. Right now they're virtual, but usually they are in the district on Thursdays. They do see many of our students. They're seeing 9 students, and they concentrate on the middle school and high school. Horizons also has been with us for about a year, and the wonderful thing about Horizons is the fact that they have actually provided PD not only on opening day for our faculty and staff, but they are more than willing to provide any PD that we ask for on mental health services. And also they work with Jessica to publish webinars, and February's webinar, which is posted, is on coping skills around anxiety, time management, and change. And they will continue to do these from now until the end of the year. And just a note too, that our family support services do work with all of our children, all of our students over the summertime. The next, we've had a 2-year partnership. Now we're ending our 2nd year with Child and Family Services. They're currently seeing 24 students across all grades. They actually work K to 12. Child and Family Services, when they are not servicing our students virtually, they are in district on on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then the third and most new partnership is with Gateway Longview. Gateway Longview is in the district on Fridays. In the mornings, they are seeing students at Huth, and in the afternoon at Kegebine. They are 21 students have been referred and 12 are engaged in counseling. The nice thing about Gateway Longview is they are coming into our schools, and they are still doing face-to-face counseling with our elementary age students. If we remember back, we did attempt to start a Save the Michaels group, which was going to be housed at our Golden Age Center, but due to COVID and the school closure in March of last year, we haven't gotten that off the ground yet. They will continue to offer virtual supports for families and individuals anywhere in Western New York, and they did tell us that once we have a reopening, and the Golden Age Center opens again, they are interested in partnering with us again to actually start servicing our community once a week. Trying to get to the next slide. Family Support Center Coalition, Jessica Hutchings, to continue to support and to reach out and network. She attends monthly meetings on Wednesdays. Right now they're via Google Meet. And this coalition is with other districts across Western New York, other agencies across Western New York, and it remains a wonderful network of people to make sure that our Grand Island students and families are up to date and getting the services and partnerships that we are looking for our entire district. Face-to-face, I think everybody's heard about this before. It's Kids Escaping Drugs. Jessica also sits in on our face-to-face coalition and represents Grand Island. This coalition is based and helps families that are struggling with substance-related issues. These also are once a month, and again, Jessica continues to attend them via Zoom meeting. Jessica also sits in on the Opiate Task Force Committee. This again is for families that are struggling with substance-related issues, and they also have just networked out to provide information about vaping. And then last meeting, at the very end, I believe Sue asked a question about mental health services. And I did mention the fact that we did apply for a grant, and we actually partnered with Horizons to help us submit an application for a 5-year grant to help train all of our faculty and staff to help students and families with mental illness, substance abuse, etc. This grant, if awarded, will start in the end of September of 2021, and it does continue for 5 years after. So we will get that support for 5 years after we receive this grant. Part of the grant submission was to talk about how we would roll out the staff or our faculty and staff that we wanted to be trained. We thought we'd start with the school psychologists, social workers, and counselors. There are approximately 15 across the district at this time. Year 2, we would focus on the administrators. Year 3, school nurses. Year 4, our health and PE teachers. And then year 5, we would open it up to, and I know it says teachers on here, but I would say that teachers and staff, whoever wanted to be trained in helping our students with their mental health issues or substance abuse issues, we would train as well. So I'm hoping that we're going to hear within the next month if we got this grant, and I will keep you posted. Any other questions?
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Does anyone have any questions?
Cheryl, if someone's looking for the Horizons monthly webinar, where should they go to find that? Where is it on our?
It is on our webpage, and I believe it's under Jessica. If you go on our website, she actually, I should probably talk about this as well. She actually made a family support services website right on our own webpage under social work services. So everything is under that tab. And it is actually a virtual one, and there's a little Bitmoji of Jessica, in this website, and then you can actually click on referrals to the different agencies along with the webinars that we're talking about, the February one.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the superintendent's report with Dr. Graham.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. And if you're watching from home, thank you for having interest in our school district. Tonight, I'm very excited to introduce to the board, and I know you've met these individuals before, but two representatives from Young and Wright who are here tonight to talk about the work, the specific work that's being done to better understand the structure at Kegabyne, as we've had some concerns over many years about the soil and the water underneath the building. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean Wright from Young and Wright, and then I know Matt Cummings will also be presenting. But Sean, if you could just maybe, give us a little brief background of all the work that's been done, regarding Kegabyne and understanding the structural engineering, and then maybe, pass it off to Matt. That would be great.
Yeah, I guess I'll just introduce the process. Matt's got a pretty thorough explanation of what's gone on to date out there. But basically, based on some of the concerns that the district has had and discussions that we've had over the course of the last year, we've been pulling together information that was available in the past and information that we actually had done about a year ago, along with some we're looking at a third option now, a third party to help us evaluate this. The structural concerns there are more or less, there are not structural concerns that the building is safe or that's going to fall down, but there's some unusual movement that's going on in non-structural parts of the building that we're trying to understand as the district looks toward the future and making capital improvements in the district, and what kind of future Kegabyne Elementary has with that future, and whether or not there are things we can do there to alleviate the concerns and move forward with more renovations in that building, or whether or not the district may want to consider other options. So in conjunction with the committee that we've been working with and campus construction management, Matt has been working with the structural engineer to get an understanding of what's going on in the building. And so Matt, I'll ask you to take it from there.
Good evening, everyone. So real quick for the agenda, we just went through the introductions. I'll be touching base on the current and previous structural analysis that the district's been through. And then we'll also touch base on what we think the next steps are, and then we'll just wrap it up with questions and answers. Okay, so back in 2003, the district hired a structural and engineering firm to look at the various conditions that were occurring inside Kegabyne Elementary. The belief that there were interior wall cracks are kind of related to how the building is constructed. A lot of the interior walls are built on a 2-inch concrete slab with a vermiculite layer soil below that. The demising walls, those are the walls between classrooms, are actually just sitting on this floor without a thickened slab. So we're seeing masonry walls sitting on a relatively thin concrete slab. That structural engineer provided several recommendations. One was to remove part of the floor slab and placing basically a strip footing underneath those demising walls to help prevent any future wall movements. And then the other one was to replace that demising wall with metal studs and drywall. So it's obviously a lot lighter assembly. And then as recently as 2019, Dr. Graham, if you could advance the slide for me, thank you. We had Syracuse engineers perform some additional tests and investigations, and they believe that a lot of it is due to the superficial clays that are underneath the floors themselves that are causing this heaving and settlement issues. They also noted that there was interior wall deterioration They couldn't determine if it was just a result of the soil shifting or if it was more of water infiltration or even possibly corrosion. So they provided several recommendations, very costly ideas. One being removing the existing concrete floor altogether and all the fills and soils that are below that, so that you get down to the virgin soil that's much more stable. And then you provide a controlled fill that's fully compacted, and then obviously new concrete slab floor and then finishes. It does seem to be a really cost prohibitive adventure. So we reached out to another engineering firm to see if we could come up with a different strategy. This particular report right here is the one from Syracuse in 2019. It just basically identifies the various floor conditions and elevations. So we'll use that as a part of our records moving forward and be able to analyze everything after the final structural reports. So what we've done now is we're using HSE structural engineering. They're coming up with a little bit different approach. We're going to use over the course of the next year to track the movement of the floor conditions itself. Instead of just taking one snapshot throughout the year, we're actually looking at winter, summer, winter to see if there's any differences in what the building is doing. We've already completed the December of 20 field report. We are targeting a June of 21 field report and then another December of 21 field report. And then we'll compile all of that information and provide a report and hopefully have some recommendations to share with the district. And then real quickly, some of the things that they discovered during the December 20 field investigation is that a lot of the floor movement was just floor settling. They did notice some floor buckling and heaving. The intent was to put some floor monitors devices on the floor and use that as a kind of a test to track the movements. However, once they were inside the building, they realized that the locations weren't suitable for this device, just because it would be disturbed by students and staff throughout the course of the year. So what they ended up doing, and you can see in the image here, they used laser level measurements throughout the entire building to basically chronologue all of the existing floor conditions. So we'll take those measurements from December, we'll compare them, do it again in June, and then again in December of 21. In general, the floor elevations didn't deviate more than a ½ inch, which was interesting because some of the previous investigations, specifically the one in 2003, indicated that the deviations were in excess of 2+ inches. So it's interesting for me because we're seeing different results over the course of less than 20 years. So we'll see what plays in here. Another thing that they noticed was the possibility of water vapor intrusion into the building itself. You can see by some of the photos here, these are hollow metal frames. They're all made of metal and they're rusting out basically from the bottom up, which indicates some moisture from whether it's the crawl space or the soils below the slab on grade are kind of making their way up into past the floor slab, and the steel is actually causing problems as well. So they went into the basement. Dr. Graham, if you went to the previous slide, you can see an example of water actually coming into the building itself. It's not a steady stream, but it is enough that you're introducing water into the building system, and it's finding its way out. So sometimes it's coming through the floor slab itself. So we'll want to keep an eye on that and see what investigation we need to further develop. Let's see. Their initial assessment is that while the slab is showing movement, it doesn't appear to be overly excessive. And as I mentioned earlier, the 2003 report did suggest that the deviations were in excess of 2 inches, but their investigation isn't really showing that at the moment. So those are pretty much the results of the previous structural analysis, and then that's the current field report from our current structural engineer. And then Sean, if you'd like to discuss the next steps.
Yeah, I think that our goal here is to get some recommendations from the structural engineer to see whether is bulleted here, you know, whether this is something that can be fixed and repaired, whether or not partial demolition and rebuilding will have to take place. We know from the addition that was put on in 2003 that a more compact sub base was used in order to develop the floor slab there, although we are also seeing signs that there may be movement involved in that as well. So we're trying to see if there's ways that we can mitigate that before we get into any sort of a repair plan. And then we want to discuss these options with the state education department. Obviously, aid will be in, you know, a discussion and any work that's done here. And we want to make sure that the state education department understands what we're trying to achieve, what the district is trying to achieve in renovating this building, and understand what our options will be moving forward for the different types of renovation or expansion or change, whatever changes may be required, and how that'll affect your state education department building aid. I know in our committee meetings, we have been talking a little bit about developing a financial plan with the district. I know Ruby has been in contact with your financial advisors and looking at, you know, the district's current financial situation and when funds may be available to potentially do something as a next capital project and work with this building. And we intend to continue to work with the building committee that we've been meeting with regularly on developing a plan. I would call it a long-term plan for the remainder of the district's buildings and the remainder of their needs, so that this all comes together as a package that outlines work that may be required at all of your buildings or may be desired at all of your buildings. That's kind of what the committee is designed to do. So I think that's about where we are right now. Dr. Graham, if you have, if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, this is a good time for anybody to ask any questions.
Sean, when do you expect the updated structural engineering report to come back again?
Well, they plan on putting out an interim report in June once they feel that they've gotten past the spring. See, the soils underneath there, what we believe is part of the problem. There's a lot of mixed materials in there, but some of it is clay, and clay has a tendency to expand and contract when it's wet. So the idea is that we're monitoring it as it gets wet in the fall, as it freezes through the winter, and it's going to be wet again in the spring. And then what we're hoping to see is if it's just the normal fluctuation that they would expect from when it gets back to a dry season sometime around June. So that's the next time we'll get a report from them. And then I think from that, we'll be able to make some determinations and be able to at least start to suggest some ideas that we might want to pursue. But they want to take all the way through the next fall and into winter to see if that pattern continues to be the same as well. But I don't know that we'll necessarily need to have, you know, that final information in order to be having discussions with you and with the committee.
So when would you anticipate state education department would be part of the discussion, sending something to the state education department? When would that occur?
I think, you know, the committee has started already to talk about what the options might be as we move into this. And I think that once we have, my fear is that I would hate to go to the state education department without having something at least, you know, in the semi-final stages of this structural report, because I think that that's the kind of proof that they're going to be looking for when we say, well, you know, we need to address certain things here. They're going to say, well, have you addressed this with a structural engineer? Do you know what the issues are? You know, do you know if there's a remediation plan that we can use so that, you know, these soils aren't an issue moving forward with renovations on this? So they're going to be looking for a more complete plan. And I think that's why we need to at least have this second phase of this structural report in our hands.
Okay, so the board will be updated after the second report is completed then with the different options before it goes to state ed then. They'll probably, after the school year is completed, we'll be able to update the board with the final report and then the options for the board to consider.
Absolutely. I think what we would want to do is we would want to address the options with the committee and with the board. And then, you know, not until we have, you know, everyone's approval that those are at least logical suggestions would we want to then take them to the state education department.
Sean, Glenn, how you doing? There's different places of the building that are having different effects, correct? You kind of go through that a little bit at least, so we can, the board as a whole can hear about that.
So Sean, I think Glenn is asking, can you just reiterate with the board some of the concerns throughout the entire building that we're seeing with respect to, you know, these issues, whether it's floor cracking or anything else?
Yeah, I think as Matt outlined, there's two things that we're concerned with. We're seeing signs that moisture is mitigating through the surface and into the walls. It's deteriorating some of the plaster at the base of the walls. It's deteriorating the metal frames. And we somewhat have an idea of what that might be caused from, just from the thin slabs and the lack of a vapor barrier. But we want to understand a little bit more about the excessive moisture that's there. The second concern really has to do with the floor slabs. So the two structural reports that have been done already indicate that the foundations for the building aren't moving, and that the structural walls aren't moving. So it's really just the floating slabs that are filled in between there. Now, more recent information, we've been working with Jim Rosler on this, indicate that there's some signs of movement also in areas of the 2003 edition where there was a significant amount of structural design that went into that portion of the building trying to mitigate this problem. So if I had to put my finger on it, it seems to me that much of this is caused by the excessive moisture that we're finding under the building and how the soils are affected by it and how they swell and contract. And that's the part that we're working on. This structural engineer, what I like about working with these guys, part of the solution may not just be necessarily fixing the structure and making it more resistant to that, but it may be a plan to help mitigate more of the moisture, get it away from the building, and try to solve this problem a slightly different way. And that's what we're hopeful for.
Good. Thank you, Sean. Jim Rosler, I think you're on with us. Is there anything you would like to add?
No, actually, I think they hit it on the head. We've been tracking this since I came on the island in 2015. And it's just a problem that we need to address. We addressed some of it in 2013 or 2014, I believe, in the library, and we found the unsuitable soils, and it just got to be such a stretch on the budget that we moved away from it. So I think this is the right path. I think we need to follow it through and see what the engineers bring to us, and then we can move ahead if we want to save this building or not.
So I don't know if the board wants any more details on the fix and repair or the demolition options, if we need any more details at this time, or I know there was 3 options we discussed as a committee, so I don't know if you want to get into that a little more, if you feel as though you need more background on that, or if we can wait until the second report comes out. But I know it says on your slide here, fix and repair and demolition, so I didn't know if you wanted to give any more detail about that. to the board at this time, or if you want to wait for that other report.
I think that it'll be more valuable if we wait for that next report, because the folks at Campus Construction are, capable of being able to provide some cost data to you then on what those repairs may, what those different options may cost. But I think that the details of those repairs will come out in the report, and that'll help them put a price to it so that you can understand the cost impact of each of the options.
Okay, great. Anyone have any other questions?
Thank you very much, Sean and Jim and Matt. We really appreciate you sharing this with the board and look forward to our next meeting.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Okay, that brings us to the Board of Education report and a draft resolution. And developing a draft resolution, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or had an opportunity to look over, again, the draft that was read at the last meeting.
I'm gonna thought that we table this, we don't do anything on it at this point.
Yeah, again, like I said last meeting, I do like the 3 points for funding, for a plan for reopening, fully reopening, and continue to emphasize the safety and health of the students and faculty and staff. But there are a few other things that maybe need to be looked at. So I'd be fine with Glenn tabling it until we can get some further guidance on it.
I think Glenn wants to completely table it. And
Yeah,
for me, I just want to reiterate what I said at the last meeting. For me, the only way I would consider it is if it only addressed the opening of schools. That wasn't the intent when we first started talking about it, for financial and all of that. And I think, with all of that said, if we can't agree with the resolution, then it needs to be tabled to ground, because it's just kind of taken on a different direction. I received many text calls from our community members that addressed that with me, that it was going to be a resolution on school opening. I think that if our schools did open, it would be done safely, and there would be the money there to do it, because we would have the directive from our government, and it wouldn't be something that we were going rogue hoping we get the funding. So for me, unless we go in the directive of just opening the schools, which was the original intent, I am in agreement with Glenn and tabling it.
Nicole? Fine with tabling it?
I'm fine with tabling it.
All right. Any, Joy, Robin, any comments?
I would like to table this.
Robin?
Same.
All right. All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0.
I don't think we need a motion.
Oh, we don't need it to? Oh, okay. Sorry. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page there. All right.
I don't think we need a motion to say we didn't do something.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, moving on to the hybrid virtual model. Anyone have any discussion on the hybrid virtual model? I know, Dr. Graham, you have an update for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Share that now?
Sure. And then if there's any questions or discussion afterwards, I'd be happy to respond to that. So again, thank you very much to our board for always, standing up for kids and asking excellent questions. Today, I just want to give you just a little bit of an update on numbers. As we return to school today, we did have a report of some additional positive cases. Unfortunately, I was unable to send out the letter tonight, so I might do that tomorrow morning. But the last time we talked, these numbers were a little bit smaller, but right now, since November to February, Sidway has had 10 positive cases, Youth now 17, Pegadine 10, the middle school 16, and the high school 42, for a total of 95 since November. Also updated on the slide are the number of employees who have needed to be isolated due to being positive for COVID-19. Since January, the number of employees is 27. And interestingly, also, there are 27 different employees who have needed to be quarantined since January. So that just gives you a little bit of an update on that in our district. Many of you have seen this chart before. It's a little small on the screen, but the most recent update is February 19th. The net change week to week of individuals who are positive on our entire island is 3.8%. So there were 55 new cases between February 12th and February 19th. And on a line graph, it looks like this. This line graph starts September 4th. Remember, it keeps track of the week to week net change on the entire island for people being positive for COVID-19. So as you look at this chart from September 4th to say October 30th, it was, there was a little bit of a spike on October, I believe this looks like October 2nd. And then you see a steady increase starting October 30th all the way to as high as December 11th. And then a downward slope, then an upward slope on January 15th, and then a downward trend. So if we were to look at this point here and track it all the way back to September, it looks like good news. It looks like here in Grand Island, at least on the entire island, the week-to-week net change is starting to level off and be similar to early September and October. This is just some recent data that I found over the weekend. Again, sometimes showing data, that's a couple days old, it's reported a little differently in the news today, for example. But this chart represents the number of individuals since March until now that have been hospitalized with COVID-19. You can see all the way to the left in the top line that, there were about 250 in April that were hospitalized with COVID. And then you see the downward slope and the leveling out, or the throughout the summer it was flat. And then you see the trajectory from October to December, a major increase in Erie County of people being identified or needing hospitalization due to COVID. And then the good news on this chart is the downward slope. Currently there are 220 patients in hospitals, and 51 of them are in the intensive care unit in our hospitals locally. This is a little bit more of a granular look with similar data. You can see in February 6th, there were 292 individuals in Erie County who were hospitalized. And as of the 19th, there were 220, so a good trend downward. Also on this chart, you can see that there were 60 individuals on February 6th needing intensive care. And then today, or a couple days ago, it was down to 51. Also on this chart are individuals needing airway assistance, February 6th, 41, and now at 38. And then the last line on the bottom indicates the number of individuals who had passed away as a result of COVID in their hospitals. And you can see that this is very sad, but at least the number as of February 19th was smaller than previous days. This might be of interest to the board and the community. This is the number of individuals in Erie County, or by percent, who have received their first dose of the vaccination. You can see here that 13% of Erie County residents have had their first dose of the vaccination, and 7% have had their second dose.
Dr. Graham, can I stop you for one
Yeah.
second? I may or may not have heard that the districts might have to report vaccination numbers. Is this?
Yeah. I'm trying not to laugh. I'm so sorry. The governor announced today that he expects the districts to report on Wednesday the number of teachers who have been vaccinated. I can tell you, Jay, and I can tell our board, I don't have that data. And I'm very surprised that the governor made that announcement without any pointing us into any direction on how to provide that data. Obviously it's interesting, it's private and personal information, and I have questions on how to accurately report that information, but it was announced today in a press conference.
Just curious, thank you.
Yeah, excellent question. So I do want to make sure that the board knows that on February 18th, the Erie and Niagara School Superintendents Association wrote a letter to the brand new Commissioner of Education, Dr. Betty Rosa. In this letter, we welcome her. She's newly appointed, and we are thrilled to have her as our leader and Commissioner of Education. So we highlight that in our letter. And the purpose of our letter is also to make sure she is aware of all the things that Western New York superintendents have had to do and Western New York school districts have had to do to get ready to open schools. Obviously, we follow the New York State Department of Health and New York State Education Department guidelines and regulations. We illustrate in the letter how things changed in July 17th, from July 17th to July 22nd. And we talked about those unique changes and the wording of those changes and how that impacted our plans to reopen in September. Also in this letter, we were very clear in making sure that our new commissioner knows that, school districts are acknowledging that there is a downward trend now in the infection rate. And as a result, we, wanted to share our concerns with the commissioner with respect to the loss of learning and the loss of access to mental health services as we are continuing in our hybrid model and some families in the 100% remote model. And we additionally wanted to urge the Department of Education and the Commissioner to collaborate with superintendents so that we can build a plan for reopening schools for everybody. So in this letter, we cite also the most recent research or growing trends from public health experts, everybody from the American Academy of Pediatrics to Dr. Joe Allen from Harvard, who are currently saying that departments of education and departments of health should consider 3 to 6 feet of physical distancing in classrooms to better fully reopen or to bring more children in for in-person teaching and learning and mental health services. So we highlight that in this letter. And in addition, we highlight the need for our families to have access to food and nutrition and breakfast and lunch programs. And of course, as I've mentioned several times, access to counselors and social workers and psychologists. In our letter, we also highlight the importance of having children come to school every day so that perhaps some children in all communities live in traumatic environments. And we want to make sure that we have every opportunity for those children to have a safe place to come to school, a trusted place, and access to teachers and principals and counselors and social workers and psychologists who have the best interest in protecting children as well. So this letter, was very pointed. We are basically requesting, the opportunity to work with the Department of Education to do everything we can to open schools as early as possible, given that the Department of Education and the Department of Health are ready to make changes to their guidance, changes to the 6 feet of physical distancing, so that we can support our kids in a greater response than we are right now. So this letter was signed by the officers of the Erie Niagara School Superintendents Association and many other superintendents. I can tell you, don't infer that because there aren't 3 more pages of signatures. Every superintendent in the Erie and Niagara School Superintendents Association endorsed this letter. Okay. This letter was also sent to Kathy Hochul, our Lieutenant Governor, the New York State Department of Health, some of our political representatives at the Senate and Assembly, also Niagara County's represented and their health department and their legislative people. Our district superintendents supported, Dr. Fusco and Dr. O'Rourke, as well as Dr. Gottschall and the Orleans Niagara BOCES. And we also sent it to the New York State Council of School Superintendents. So just stop there to see if anybody has any questions.
Is there any expectation, Brian, that some follow-up will occur so that, the letter has some response from from someone, as opposed to, we sent a letter and that was the end of it?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. That's a great question. I will say to you that there are many voices out there outside of the Erie and Niagara school superintendents. So I think, from my perspective, the message is getting out there to the New York State Education Department and the Department of Health, be up above and beyond our letter. But to that end, I will say to you that Dr. Fusco and Dr. O'Rourke and Dr. Gottschall, and the district superintendents who meet regularly with the New York State Education Department have brought this voice forward to them. And we're hopeful that within the next week or so, we might actually hear a response directly about these voices.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the advocating you're doing on behalf of our students, on behalf of our district, and on behalf of the students of Western New York in general. I think it's a powerful group for sure. So if anyone can get a seat at the table, I'm sure the superintendent group can. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And just to conclude my presentation tonight, I know the board has been very supportive of our new initiative, inviting our Sidway students to school. It starts this Wednesday. The A to L cohort will come in the morning, and then the M to Z cohort will come in the afternoon. So we're very excited about this opportunity. Again, I can't thank the board enough for supporting it and allowing the district to spend extra dollars in transportation to support this initiative. Additionally, I just want to make sure that the board is aware that the district will be bringing back and reconvening the task force committees that we used last June and July and August to re-examine our current hybrid model and to look for every opportunity that's available to us currently right now to bring more children back to the classroom. I can tell you that during my vacation the last week, I spent hours and hours looking at different models and coming up with some ideas. Not to say that that's what we're going to do, but this isn't something that we can just snap our fingers and do by next week. This is going to take a lot of thought and a lot of careful planning. One of the major factors are the children whose families have chosen 100% remote. And there are opportunities in classrooms to have more seats available and keep 6 feet of social distancing. But it's going to take a lot of effort and thought to do it correctly and equitably for children in our schools. But I did want to let the board know that we're going to move forward with these discussions and look at every possible opportunity to bring children back for more opportunity of teaching and learning. Any questions about this?
I just had one question on your presentation. When you were talking about the numbers of teachers that needed to be quarantined, and I know there's been questions about shifting from the hybrid model to remote, for example, in youth. And I was just wondering if you could go review why we have to do that at times. So, some of the comments or concerns that I've heard are, well, they're shifting from this model to that, or 1 minute we're hybrid and now we're shifting to remote. So I was wondering if you could put that into a context, just so people understand, why that had to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We did move youth to being 100% remote, right? And we had to pivot in that direction because it was a staffing issue. There was a significant staffing issue with respect to either being quarantined or isolated in that school. And we really needed to look and examine if there were any issues within the school that was causing that, if it was community spread, but more importantly, did we have enough staff to be able to function like all of our other buildings? So, I'm grateful to the youth families for being flexible, and I know how challenging that is. But, obviously we were driven by, the importance of making sure that everybody was safe and that everybody still had access to an education. But, it's very difficult to run a school when there's so many people that are absent, whether it's isolated or quarantined.
So pivoting to one model to the next will, could happen depending on quarantining, staffing issues, and that sort of thing. It's not as though we, it's an arbitrary decision. It's unfortunate, but it could happen.
And I think this graph tells the story, right? if you look at this graph on the entire island, right, between December and January, we had spikes from week to week of community spread on the island. Now it's leveling off, and the increase week to week is so much smaller than it was as early as December 11th. You can see the top peak of this graph was December 11th, and then it peaked again on January 15th, right? So that's looking at it as an aggregate of the entire island, and many of those indicators we know were related to, at least maybe parallel to it, there was a correlation at youth as well.
Thank you.
Sure. So that's all I had, to share. I'm available for any questions or additional questions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we did not have anyone sign up for the public comment session for general items not included in this agenda. So that brings us to committee and committee of the whole items and information for the roundtable, beginning with Jay.
Not much. I guess I just wanted to mention that it's good to hear and see kids participating in school sports. Certainly encouraging. I hope that more and more kids have those opportunities. That's all.
Nicole?
I don't have anything today, thank you.
Okay, June? Sue?
I just wanted to make, mention to the start of the school year for next year. I know we typically either start on a Tuesday or Wednesday after Labor Day. I have had some comments from parents in this community that Tuesday after Labor Day is a Jewish holiday. And if we could at all start on the Wednesday so that they're not having to miss the first day of school due to the holiday.
I also had some comments
Good.
regarding that.
I don't know if we looked at it, I know I did reach out and we were saying we're looking at Wednesday,
We are. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll hopefully have something for the board in the next meeting for the calendar.
Thank you.
Glenn?
I don't know.
Joy?
I'm all set, thank you.
Robin?
Nothing at this time.
Cheryl?
Oh, I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Ruby? Dr. Harris?
Good, sorry.
Okay.
Everything's muted. I'm all set.
And I just want to piggyback off of what Jay said. The sports, it's great to see the kids in the live streaming. Who do we thank for that? That is wonderful. Parents.
I don't know, Mark,
Can
who should we thank for live streaming?
Is it Mark?
There's a lot of
There's a
different
lot of
factors,
sources.
but Mark is one of them. Steve Steck
Yep.
came up with
Yeah.
a really great solution, so we want to thank him. We also want to thank West New York Athletics, who are helping us stream some of the varsity basketball games. Some of the ice rinks are streaming on their own, and we're working every solution to be able to stream swimming as well.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Thank you, Mr. Steck. Thank you to everyone for the live streaming. The parents are loving, at least, getting to see their kids play. And hopefully we'll be in person to watch our kids play soon. So, Dr. Graham, that brings us to you.
Well, thank you very much. I do want to just share one picture. I'm going to be doing the State of the Schools address this Thursday with the Chamber of Commerce, and I just thought that our board would really appreciate this photo. You can just take a look at this for a second. And I'll go back one. See if this is a big presentation, so you can see it's still loading. This was our first girls JV basketball game in our gymnasium, and every athlete in this significantly aerobic sport are wearing masks, which to me is just astounding, right? If you think about where we were in July and August and the conversations that, around would children be compliant? Would we be able to maintain, these protocols? This picture is a remarkable photo. It just, to me, it's very moving to see these young ladies competing because of the love of their sport and doing so fully masked on the court is unbelievable. So I just wanted to highlight that, and just share, just a few more notes with the board about athletics. So let me just find my notes. So, the first of 3 abbreviated interscholastic sports seasons have just started in this winter season. These are abbreviated because they were deemed as high risk by the New York State Department of Health. And the focus of our sport programs always and continues to be that our student athletes have an opportunity to conduct themselves in a safe, as safely as possible in their sport of choosing. This winter season goes until March 22nd. It includes girls and boys bowling, boys swim, and girls and boys basketball at this time. Modified basketball just started today. The Fall 2 season starts March 22nd, so just process that for a moment. We're calling it Fall 2, and it starts March 22nd. And that's going to include football, competitive cheerleading, boys and girls volleyball, girls swim, and unified bowling. Unified bowling actually is going to start around March 5th. Then we have a spring season that's going to start May 3rd. And that's baseball, softball, boys and girls lacrosse, track, boys tennis, wrestling, and unified basketball. So as a school district, I can't thank our coaches and our students and their parents enough for following all these risk mitigating protocols. And additionally, we're grateful to our custodians and our cleaning staff who have been going above and beyond to make sure our kids are safe in our classrooms and in their extracurricular activities. So I really want to thank Ron Rose and his team for all their efforts, Teresa Lizaday for making sure transportation is going, Robin Kwiatek and Mark Gordon and Josh Nichols for working together for live streaming, John Roth and Kathy Christ and Karen Surdike, our athletic trainer Jeff Green, Mike Gloria. Everybody has really worked hard. And I know this board is also aware that our other extracurricular advisors, clubs, and music all know that they can put a plan together to come and do more in-person after-school activities. And some of that is already underway. So, and then my last note tonight in the roundtable is that I have the sincere pleasure of conducting teacher observations. This year I have, I think, between 23 and 26 teacher observations, and I absolutely love it. Okay, I'm able to go into classrooms and see the remarkable work that our teachers are doing on a daily basis, and I can't thank them enough for how flexible and adaptable and resilient they have been in this hybrid model. So I just wanted to share those notes with you tonight.
Dr. Graham, can I just ask you a question? Are any of the other March or May sports going to have modified sports with them?
Yeah, yes, as long as we offer modified sports, they should all be able to run. Yeah. And again, to emphasize music and other clubs and activities, all those advisors need to do is talk to their principal to make sure that they're, following all the protocols.
Okay.
And even rugby will be able to go, which is, is done by Dan Hager. So a lot going on. I talked to Dean, our football coach, and he told me those athletes will be masked as well. So it's really remarkable how people have adapted.
Yep, thank you to Ms. Poole and the JV girls for staying safe and following those protocols. We really appreciate your dedication to keeping everyone safe and your dedication to the sport as well. I just have a couple dates to announce. March 8th is another Board of Education meeting and our second budget input session. I bet you're really excited about that, Dr. Harris, coming up there. And March 22nd, we have a Board of Education meeting and a work session. March 29th is the joint meeting with the Town of Grand Island here in the professional development room at 7 p.m. With that, if I could have a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting at 8:34 p.m. A second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
All
Mark, I can just exit, because you handle the recording, right? I can just click out of here?
Yes.
Okay.